these taxes or the new tax bracket, the new tax policy of the government, what is the standing of the NPP on this matter?
From a principal perspective, economic principle perspective, we are very clear that the deficit of the fiscal deficit should be minimized, and we should increase our income and reduce our expenditure. That's no doubt about it. And in terms of gaining income, direct taxes are the way to go forward, because indirect taxes is unfair on the majority. So, however, this tax change on the direct tax, how we see it is taxing the good behavior. So it's going against the principles of taxation of justice, because now what you see, Sharon, is Sri Lanka has an 82 billion economy annually, and 53% of this economy is distributed among 20% of the families in general terms, right? So when you say 20% of the families, we would say earners, it should be minimum 1.2 million people. But at the tax department of Sri Lanka, we have only 500,000 tax files, actually to be precise 580,000. And in that 580,000, 250,000 is mostly payee tax. That's when people earn salaries, you pay. So basically someone who declares tax is about 200,000. Now, the problem here is you are going to tax the people who has been paying taxes and, trying to shrink their disposable income without any discussion, without any mechanism, without any proposal to bringing the other 700,000 people who never pays tax, who avoids tax. Last year, there was estimate, Sharon, if we really do the tax, whatever the tax brackets that we had, right? If we really collect those taxes, there's 900 billion rupees to be collected on income tax. And that 900 billion tax, in general terms, I would say it's 3 times the current tax collection. So Ranil and the government does not want to touch the people who never pays tax. They want to, squeeze the middle class, middle income earners, and even they are widening the tax base by, lowering the 300,000 bracket to 100,000. But Sharon, 100,000 is not an income at this point with 60% inflation and 90% food inflation. The buying power of the people has really gone down. So this is a big blow on people. We wouldn't have done it this way. We are for direct taxes. We wouldn't have done it this way. Secondly, these taxes, we understand it's the IMF requirement that they are trying to fulfill, but it's in the wrong way. And again, for people who pay tax in this country, the transparency is not there. There is no assurance that the corruption will end. There's no assurance these taxes will go into the people who are really in need. And also, again, in simple, if somebody is earning 1 million rupees, you are supposed to now pay 250,000 rupees a month. How do you define that, right? How do you expect people to thrive in their income? How do you expect people to be passionate about earning more in this country? How would you ask the SME sectors to do businesses and pay 30% tax at the start of the business? Because income tax for SMEs were avoided on certain areas of interest, but it's again been put in. So this is counterproductive. People will avoid taxes going forward. And I think the biggest blow to this country is the genuine people who came to Aragalaya who was asking for justice. I think this is a blow on the face for all of us. And people will leave, especially the IT sector, the professional sectors, the bankers. I think they lived in this country because they have a somewhat of a proper income and a disposable income. Now they lost their disposable income and the living standards. On top of that, the government is going to take another 20%, additional 20%. I think this will push more people to leave the country. The good talent will leave. 4 or 5 industries will fall in flat on its face. And we think this change is going to be detrimental for this country's workforce.
What would have the National People's Power done differently in introducing these taxes and, of course, meeting the standards that have been set by the IMF?
Yeah, so the IMF, they never said what to do. IMF said reduce the deficit, increase your taxes, right? So when it comes to tax collections, we would have gone after the people who doesn't pay tax. So Charlene, if you ask me where is that 700,000, I can tell in my fingers where that 700,000 is and how we are going to find it. Every divisional secretariat has all the registered companies, all the individuals, all proprietors, partnerships, and the corporates. You take the list of that and you understand what is their assets, what is their revenues, and you do that proper estimation, you know who should pay tax. If you take the list of doctors who do private consulting, we have the list from each hospital. You can take it and you can find their income. If you take the lawyers who do the private practices, if you take the teachers who earn, through tuition, there are many professions, right? If you go to accountants, you go to Chartered Accountants Institute and ask the names of the people who does private accounting practices, and you really can understand who really earns this country, right? And also, there is a huge cartel of corrupt businesses who never pay taxes, right? You take the sectors, if you go rural and even the corporates, some have not declared, some are keeping 2 books, some are waiting till the Inland Revenue sends you the letter and pay a certain amount of bribe to get over it. I mean, that 900 billion is what we will go after first, right? When the country is stable, the living standards are up again, we would probably, think of any kind of increase in the tax bracket. We would mostly go for the people who never pays tax.
Chaturanga, also an interesting comparison as far as the numbers go. I actually saw this on one of these sites that, of course, work to disseminate information among the general public. I did the math and the numbers really check out, because average amount that a person has to earn to be above the poverty line or the international poverty line is somewhere around $2 or so. And according to the calculations, for a family of 4 to be above the poverty line, that family needs to earn around 95,000 approximately, judging by the current exchange rate here in Sri Lanka. So if the tax is imposed, or the pay tax is imposed on a person earning 100,000 rupees, you'd know that traditionally in Sri Lanka, we have a work environment where the father goes to work, the mother stays at home, takes care of the children. Traditionally, in many parts of the country, many villages, and or one member of the family usually goes to work, and there are about 2 children. So under this new taxing policy, it would mean that people who are maybe once the exchange rate shifts a little bit more, people who are even under the international poverty line will be taxed for their income.
Yes, Sharon, I think this is the flow of the system, right? So basically, the wide thinking, the narrow mind thinking of fixing a problem at one place is what Sri Lanka has been doing. So when you create the problem and then you find a very specific tiny area to improve on it, you don't, because we are talking about a macro economy, right? So there's ripple effects, there's it's like a connected network, right? So what you just say, I think it's a very interesting stat that you brought in. So basically in July, Department of Statistics said our poverty line is 53,000 rupees. I would agree with you. Now it would have gone up to 95 if you do the purchasing comparison with the dollar. So what we are basically saying is everybody who earns should pay income tax, averse to people who really earn high. The problem is this, right? One is the living standard. When you don't even have your living standards, the consumption is anyway matched to your income. That means there's no disposable income, right? So generally tax principle is when you have disposable income, when you can save, when you can earn more, when you can invest. Those are the people who should literally get taxed, right? So one way it's discouraging people to earn. The other way is it's going to have a huge issue on living standards. I just met a colleague today. She was talking about how much she has to pay and how much she has as savings in general monthly salary, right? Actually, she was telling, I don't have 36,000 rupees to pay taxes because she has taken a car and she has taken a loan, and that's the reality, right? So I think this is a very absurd decision taken by Ranil Wickremesinghe. The reality will hit next year. I'm going to count me on this. Our national tax income on direct taxes will further reduce.
People
will not declare. The people who are working will get penalized because you get your pay chopped off and with the salary. That portion will increase, but there was 200,000 who was willingly paying tax, right? Who was having a tax file. They are going to hide it. I know professionals who just discuss few with me saying now it's better to get out of employment, move into consultancy, take the income and put it into a private business and show losses so that you don't have to pay the bloody tax, right? So what I'm trying to say is this is equal to Gotabaya Rajapaksa's
fertilizer policy.
Fertilizer decision, unplanned, unwise, very problematic.
Thank you very much, Chaturanga, for joining us on our show.